culture. What if I said that? Do you think that would be infringing on your rights in this country and it would be disrespectful to you?
Infringing on my rights that they outlawed funerals for a specific group. I would say, yeah,
For
that's a
everybody
form of
but pagans.
discrimination.
You would say that would be discrimination?
Yeah.
How? It's just their religious belief.
What's their religious belief? You arbitrarily electing pagans as the
There are 4 different versions of unions before that. But like, marriage is a Christian concept, so nobody in this country, a man and a woman. It doesn't matter if you're actually Christian. It doesn't matter if you're like this certain denomination. It only matters if you're a man and a woman. They make that distinction over like religiosity for some reason, which I think is super fucking weird. But like when it comes to like I'm giving you an example as if, oh, well, what if funerals were just a pagan concept? And they made this law saying, well, actually, only people who are pagan can have funerals. Anybody else, you just get dumped in a hole. Do you think that would be disrespectful to you or infringing on your rights in this country?
I'm in Canada, but yeah. Okay, you said it. I know you said it in America, but
practice that is so common in this country and tied to a lot of emotional things that people have around family and the afterlife or their beliefs about it, right? Whether it's pagan specific or not, like people have an attachment to a lot of holidays, whether you're a part of that religion or not too. I think that like suddenly outlawing people from being able to engage in it would be harmful and discriminatory, and it wouldn't be right. So I feel like when I'm making that argument for marriage, and you understand how it's discriminatory when it comes to the funeral concept, but you don't understand how it's discriminatory when it comes to marriage.
I never said it wasn't discriminatory. I never said it wasn't discriminatory. I said, where's the harm when somebody gets tax advantage? That was my only critique is tax advantage.
But you think it's okay to
doesn't
be
cause
discriminatory?
harm. Pardon?
You think it's justifiable to be discriminatory with marriage?
Yeah.
Why?
Because I have an objective moral framework grounded by God determining what is right and what is wrong, and God revealed to us only man and women should get married, which is the right way to do things, okay? The opposite would be wrong.
Okay, so
we don't support
wrong. That. Okay, let's leave discrimination and anti-discrimination out of it. Do you think it would be wrong if pagan people didn't allow you to get funerals in this country?
Pagan people not allowing me to, I'm going to say I don't agree with that.
Why wouldn't you agree with it? It's the same exact logic you're using for marriage.
Yes, unless they give me a reasonable justification why.
Why do they need to? It's their religion. It came from their religion. Why do they need you any other justification than the one you just provided for your belief?
Which was a reasonable justification. Why between something is right, why something is wrong.
Between a man and a woman, because your God said so. What if they said their God said so?
Their God is incorrect.
Okay, so it's not about your religion being, it's not about religious respect. It's about your religion being right, everyone else being wrong.
Yes.
Then fuck you.
Because you're wrong?
Then fuck you. Sorry. Y'all
I'd be upset too if I was
ample time to prove that, but y'all haven't proved it. There's no award that came out for somebody who proved Christianity. Sorry. Y'all say it. Other people say their religion is true. I say it's not true. And that's gone on for a lot of years. So you can keep screaming it at the hilltop all you want. It doesn't make it true.
It's the only rational worldview.
It's the only rational worldview. How many of those other worldviews have you even pursued? How many of them have you even researched?
Only God, right?
So that's none.
Can account for rationale.
I'll take that as none. I'll take that as you listen to people in your religion and haven't done any other research.
Which exist, right?
Your religious ego is
very talking. Simple.
Your religious ego is speaking for you because it's already an admission that you don't even know how other people came to their own conclusions when it comes to religiosity because you haven't researched it. You haven't looked into it at all. You just said, well, this works for me, even though I don't know any of the rationale that other people are using to justify their God or gods or lack of God being true. I know that mine is right. Do you not understand how that's stupid?
Yes, it's not stupid because what I'm positing to you is an impossible to the contrary, making it the case. It could not be otherwise.
Okay. I'll engage with this for like a good 60 seconds because it's not what this live is about. But how is it impossible for any other solution other than God existing for the universe? And not just God, your God.
Yeah, the Christian God, because what we're doing here is resorting to a PSR. Do you know what PSR is? Principle of
No.
sufficient reason. So once we get past the God concept, right now we're saying, okay, you have a God, I have a God. All right. Let's say your God is identical enough to my God. It's a maximally great being. You have a different distinction in metaphysics. Well, it is the case only a triad God, right, can account for philosophical issues like the one and the many, right? So these give my view more explanatory power than other views. Now, if your view can account for these issues like problem of induction, one in the many, right? Then your view would have more explanatory power, and I grant you that. But there is no view with more explanatory power. It doesn't occur.
Okay. So
Making it the case, my view is the most rational.
Can you explain the one and the many for me before I make a response?
Pardon?
Can you explain the one and the many for me before I make a proper response?
So we have particulars and there's universals. For example, you're a human, I'm a human. We're particular humans, right? But we share humanity, which is the universal, right? So how can you account for this distinction of universals and particulars under your said God view? If you cannot, and you fail to account for that, and my view does account for that, my view has more explanatory power.
And this is only after you concede that a God exists, that argument makes any sense, right?
What do you mean concede? Your concession is a non sequitur.
I would have to agree that God exists in order to even consider the one and the many argument. Because if you can prove it with like evolution or DNA, then that would be different than like a God existing and saying, well, God made it
this
way,
is the issue with
right?
secularism. You're not even on the same playing stage. You deny metaphysics. I'm
not literally just asking for clarification on your position. I don't know why you're being so mad
I could do this. I could do this to a secularist position. I could do this to any position. It doesn't. You don't have to concede to God.
The fucking question.
This is yes. So I'm comparing God concepts.
You're wrong yet. Like Jesus.
So right now I'm just comparing God concepts. X God fails to explain this.
Okay, I'll ask it again. I don't know why you're dodging this so hard.
You don't need to concede.
It's a very simple question.
You don't need to concede.
Does the argument of the one and the many only work after you were both agreeing that a God exists?
Not necessarily, no. The argument works because the argument works. Now, your opinion on said argument, if you're an atheist, classical theist, pantheist, natural pantheist, whatever, a deist, right? Those positions are non sequitur to the argument. The argument is showing you this view can account for
the one
X.
and the many argument can be rationalized through non-theistic means, but you're saying that logic would be defeated because of other reasoning, not the one and the many, right?
Yeah, no, that wouldn't be defeated. You would have to, like I said, you would have to accept the PSR, right? Principle of sufficient reason.
So you do have to agree that a God exists. Jesus fucking Christ, why didn't you just say so? That's what I asked you 3 times in a row.
Well, if you deny that, you're irrational.
Okay, I'm right, you're wrong logic. Like, okay. But anyways, as for my response to this specifically, even in your response, you're not admitting that it's the only solution. You're saying this is the currently most rational solution we have. AKA, there could be a future solution that comes up that could provide better rationale than you have. Like we use in the scientific theory, you can have theories that have a lot of evidence, but new theories can arise that have more evidence or better information to base that conclusion off of that can disprove that theory, right? So if you're saying, well, this is the best reasoning we currently have, this is the best reasoning that is the most logical currently, then that is a theory. That is not a fact solution that cannot be disproven, cannot be updated. I'm saying under your argumentation that you provided me, it is not saying, well, there's no other possible solution, because you're just saying, well, provide me a solution that has more evidence, which means you are willing to listen to a solution that could have more evidence. So it's not just, well, I'm right, It's just, well, I believe I'm right because I haven't seen another solution that provides more logic than mine. So I feel like you're not even arguing that.
No, it's I'm right. I'm explaining it to you. I'm tongue in cheek asking you, give me a reason under your view, because you're wrong. You can't give it a reason. That's why it's an impossible to the contrary. There is no view that can account for all these things. There is none. There
You're
is
saying it's
not
impossible for
one.
another view to exist that could account for these things.
Impossible. It would be my view. It would
What
be
is your
identical to
evidence
my view.
what is your evidence that there is no other possible explanation for these reasonings?
There literally can't be.
How?
How? Because if my God is the account for rationale, which is already determined based on my metaphysics, right, which is true, okay, necessarily, because objective truth exists, right, there cannot be something else to ground that thing. Very simple.
If objective truth exists, there cannot be another thing that grounds this thing. Are you saying that to prove the PSR, like about God existing? Explain that statement for me, because it just sounded like you're saying, well, it needs to come from a God. That's what I heard.
Again, my God necessarily exists. Necessary being. What follows is the grounding of rationale, logos, all these things. Now, is there another view that can come up with these? It would be identical to my view.
Interesting. I don't understand it fully, but I can understand that that's your belief. Again, I didn't want to engage in that for like too long. But again, like, do you think that somebody could have like a theory that doesn't have all the answers, but they can also have like a belief that that theory is more accurate than what you're presenting? Like somebody could say, well, I believe in unicorns because they're the only way we understand natural disasters. As if we didn't have scientific evidence for natural disasters. But somebody could say, well, I know we don't have like evidence as to where these natural disasters come from, but I believe that it's not logical to come to the conclusion that it's from unicorns, right? Because people did that. They imposed gods to explain natural disasters in like Greek mythology or other like theistic explanations, and then new evidence was provided that disproved those claims or like gave evidence as to where those things came from other than that god. So how do you know that there isn't just evidence out there that hasn't been presented yet that could disprove your theory, and we should reserve judgment because your theory is a radical one on the existence of a higher power that, if you're looking at all of these positions, would be considered radical? Like, how do you not understand that that's like a wild claim to come to? That, oh, well, we didn't, even though everything we've observed naturally is under this natural order, that logic to exist, and if it doesn't follow this logic, then it can't exist. Like, how do you see so much science rationale in life and then say, well, the answer has to be fantastical and cannot be like this more scientifically based argument?
Because what we're referring to here, science, like for example, the statement, science can prove everything. Can science prove that statement? No. Welcome to the realm of metaphysics. Okay, now we're accounting for the things that aren't accounted for, which my God accounts for. And if
Does
you
science even say it can prove everything?
I'm saying that statement. I'm just giving an example. Obviously, science relies on falsification. It doesn't make the claim that it proves things, right?
Yeah, but science also updates based on new information. Your beliefs don't. That's like the whole point of scientific theory, is that you're supposed to try to disprove it in order to make sure that these claims are actually accurate and that there's no other solution.
I totally grant that. Yeah, science. That's why I was.
When was the last time you tried to disprove God?
I go on TikTok lives every day trying to listen to atheists and hear their arguments.
Never
There's
with
not.
the expectation that your
Let's make
God
this
couldn't
clear.
exist.
Let's make this clear.
Never with the mindset that your God couldn't exist. I come into these lives with the possibility that God could exist, even if I think it's extremely rare or illogical. You never come into these lives with the possible conclusion that your God could not exist. Who's open-minded?
Yeah, because I'm correct.
Okay.
When you hold a position, I'm not holding a position to be fun, right? I'm not holding the position because I choose to. I'm holding the position because it is correct. This 2 + 2 = 4. If you say 2 + 2 = 5,
Says every religion ever. How am I supposed to believe you over every other religion that says the same thing? When they say not even the evidence, just like, how are you supposed to explain that I saw my God, that I saw my deity, and it was true, it was accurate? You can't disprove that. You have no information to the contrary that this didn't happen, so therefore it happened.
well, that's not a sound justification, right? It is the case this individual saying they saw something as a fallible person, right, who could be wrong.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. Your understanding of the Bible or your understanding of your religion, of your belief system, could be flawed, could be based on subjective interpretation, could be based on other people's interpretation, or the text could be flawed, or the reasoning could be flawed. I'm saying I can see flaws. You're saying there's no possibility in which these are flawed. That's accurate, 100%.
Yes.
Where in life do we fucking do that?
Yes, because from my view, I'm saying if you're going to invoke things like logic, right? Induction, you're borrowing from my worldview in the first place.
No, it's not presupposing that a God exists. It's not.
That's
God
what I'm doing.
Invent logic. Even if you presuppose that, it's not necessarily true. It's not.
What's not necessarily true?
Logic can come from human reasoning, and I don't believe God created humans. I believe humans evolved from other means. So, like, I'm sorry, you can't just say, actually, logic comes from God, so you're conceding that God exists. No, that's just illogical and a presupposition that I don't agree with.
That you just don't agree with.
It's honestly insulting as fuck. Because if anybody did that with
hilarious.
You'd get mad as fuck, honestly.
Just because you choose not to agree with it, right?
Just
arbitrarily.
Just you choose to not agree that God doesn't exist doesn't mean it's not true. God doesn't exist. Where does that get us? Where does that get us?
Yeah, just because, okay, you're not resorting to the argument. You're saying, I feel differently. Okay,
but
that's
your
fine.
argument presupposes God. In order for your claim that reasoning comes from God to be true, you'd have to believe in God. So you're presupposing God in this argument, which you know I don't believe in. So how is that not illogical to presuppose in this argument?
How is it? If you're using logic, you're engaging with what grounds Christianity. Okay, so if I have God, which grounds logic, you're engaging with that discussion.
Faith-based belief. Do you have faith that your religion is true, or do you just know it's true?
I have faith.
Cool, so then you don't know it's true. So how can you say 100%?
I have reasons.
So then it's not faith.
No, faith is trust or confidence in someone or something. I don't know your definition. And now I have reasons to justify that belief.
But the whole point is that
I can come to knowledge.
When there's gaps in logic, there's gaps in reasoning, there's gaps in evidence. You use faith to fill those gaps, saying, well, whether we have all the evidence to support it, I'm going to choose to believe it anyways because I have faith. That's the point of faith.
No, it's because if I'm going to use any sort of rational discourse, it necessitates the Christian God. This is beyond me. If you were going to engage in rationale without
you're just presupposing that it necessitates a God. I haven't conceded or agreed to that. So you keep repeating shit I haven't agreed to as if I've agreed to it, which is bad faith.
Okay, so do you have anything?
Just like if I made arguments presupposing that God doesn't exist and couldn't exist, you wouldn't agree to that, and you wouldn't further the conversation under that presupposition.
Let me take a different direction then. I won't do that. I gave you the impossible of the contrary. So this is an example of how could this not be the case? Is there like a possible theory that's why I brought up that argument, right?
But the thing
because it is the case that I can't be wrong.
Have gaps that they're not claiming to fill.
Okay, do concepts exist? Gay, what's your name?
Just call me Ophi or whatever. I don't care. Or Despair.
So, do concepts exist?
Sure.
Okay.
Whether you think those concepts exist subjectively or objectively is up to interpretation.
Okay. So concepts exist, right? Would you say, there's objective truth in the world? Things can be objectively true?
I would say so. I believe there's objective truth in the world.
Good. Because the denial of that is there is nothing objectively true. Well, is that objectively true? Anyways, good.
I mean, yeah, but
things are true.
Whenever you believe in the opposite, you're just going into the the hologram theory, whatever the fuck, where everything's a simulation and nothing is real. It's just like, I feel like anybody who goes is like, I can say like it's probably true. It's most likely true, and it's reasonable to assume that it's true. But there's still like a 0.00001% whatever the fuck chance that it's not. So it's like I have confidence that it's true, and I think the rationale is sound on it being true. But I'm not speaking in 100%. I'm speaking off how much evidence there is to support a claim.
Sound argumentation is a proof, right? If I give you valid inferences, that's a proof of God. Even if you don't accept it, if you choose to deny it, that is a logical proof. It's like a mathematical truth. If this is true, this is true, this is true, this
Okay,
is
but it's
the
true that
conclusion.
God isn't real.
No.
You understand how that's what you're saying in reverse. You're literally just saying, well, whether you agree with it or not, God's true. And like, that's like a dumbass way to approach a conversation. I already said I'm not here to be proven that God is true. I was just saying that I want to hear you out on your position. I'm not going to go into the conversation being like, well, yeah, you actually, that God is real, and we can continue the conversation as if God's real, and you can make arguments as if God is real. I don't accept that. Stop presupposing that shit over and over again as if I'm supposed to just accept that. You're just keep saying over and over again, actually, the only logical conclusion is that God is true. Let's continue the conversation under that presupposition. No. The whole conversation is about whether we can accept whether God is true or not, right? So why are you saying, well, we agree God is true, so this happens and this happens? No, that's a bad faith way to approach a conversation.
Again, I gave you the, it is, you know, secularists hate this position because it points to their absurdity, obviously, but
it doesn't point to absurdity. It claims absurdity.
That would be the conclusion. But now,
the conclusion they disagree with.
I asked you this. We can take a different road. I asked you, do concepts exist? You said yes. I said objective truth. You said yes. Okay, do concepts require mind?
I said I believe in objective truth. There is a possibility that objective truth doesn't exist and it's all a simulation, whatever the fuck.
Is that objectively true?
It could be. I don't believe so.
It's either true or it's false.
Yes, which I think we cannot conclude, but we can have reasoning as to why one is logical, right?
Okay, great. So now, let's go. Do concepts require minds?
Do concepts require minds? Under my understanding of existence, yes.
Okay. Do, you know...
If my understanding is incorrect, no. What if there's things out there that don't have minds that can create concepts? Like, what?
Okay, so concepts are mental. They require a mind. This is to the best of our knowledge.
To the best of our knowledge, yes. That's what I'm saying. You're asking me to state 100% when the whole point of my conversation is I'm not willing to state 100%. So you're asking me to concede to 100% statements over and over and over again. So even if you think it's annoying, I'm not going to concede to them.
Okay. I would say objective truth exists. You're not going to concede to 100%. Is that 100%?
You can try to convince me that objective truth exists,
true.
and I'm open to the possibility that it does. I'm just saying I believe that there are objective truths in life, but that's my belief. I'm not stating that it's 100% true. I believe it to be true. Just like you can believe God exists, but it doesn't make it 100% true. So you're fallible over and over again.
I totally understand.
Well, whether you believe it or not, it's 100% true.
I'm fallible as well. I could be wrong about a couple things. Now,
right. Doesn't that disprove your argument that it's 100% true?
I said a couple things. Now,
but not God. Got it.
Yeah. So concepts require minds.
Had to leave that room in there for you to still be 100% truth and infallible on the God concept. Got it.
So when it comes to like concepts like math, I would say like 2 + 2 = 4 being true. Right? That can't equal 5.
Under our current universe understanding, if there's another multiverse out there where it works differently, maybe not. But in our current understanding of logic and reasoning in this universe as we understand it, and the logic that exists in this universe, yes. If gravity can exist, just like we thought like gravity works the same here as everywhere, and then you go to another planet and it works completely differently. It's just like we only understand what we have information for. So under the current information that we have, this is reasonable to assume.
Yeah, great.
That's all science is. With the current information you have, you can make these logical conclusions. Anything that doesn't fit this logical conclusion should not be considered a logical conclusion.
Okay. I would say, mathematical truths like 2 + 2 = 4, they can't be grounded in I can't be the grounder and arbiter of truth saying, as a subjective agent, declaring the case of 2 + 2 is 4 because I say so, or 2 + 2 is 5 because I don't say so. So I would say it would require, grounding that isn't subjective.
But people, okay, under my framework, people constructed the logic around math. Under your framework, God created the logic around math. You understand the difference there?
Even I can grant that under your interpretation. Is it the case 2 + 2 equals 4?
Is that not the same under your interpretation of my position as well? In your position?
Yeah, I would just say humans discovered math. Yeah. Like 2 + 2.
God created the logic around
here's
math
the thing,
before math
2
was
+
discovered.
2.
If he has like sight as to everything that's going to be, right?
Well, like 2 + 2 always equaled 4. It wasn't just like mathematicians came about and 2 + 2 equals 4. It was the case like in reference to quantity. So one apple, another apple, like a apple, another apple, right? We have
if you don't like the word logic,
apples.
maybe the framework. Maybe the framework.
Yeah, we have a pair of apples. Like that's objectively. If I have one thing and another thing, I have a pair of things.
Yes, but under your framework and your belief system, God would have already had that belief system or that understanding of math before it even came about, because he has to inject with us with the possibility of having these thoughts.
Sure. My point here is I would say these, objective universal concepts that are objectively true, right? They would require grounding, which is an account, an explanation. I'm not just saying they exist, right? I'm not saying it's true.
We can go back to the old conversation using that topic, okay, specifically using that argument. There are things that don't need the same level of grounding, right? Like, we can have a grounding that we have for legality that you might not have for personal policy, right? There are things that are in law that states can dictate different than the nation, right? So there are different groundings that you can have. Like, a school can run something based on their logic about something, and then you can contest that based on like what grounding they're using, or you could like agree to the grounding that they're using. So I think when we're talking about like raising children religious specifically, I think that the grounding that we should have in society specifically is around religious autonomy. Do you agree that religious autonomy should be promoted in society?
Religious autonomy, like people having the ability to choose?
People having agency over their religious beliefs.
Yeah.
Do you not think raising a large portion of the community to accept their parents' beliefs as their own at extremely vulnerable young ages, where their minds are just discovering what facts and reality are, could contest religious autonomy?
Not at all.
How?
Just to finish, I will answer your question, but I was just at the punchline there. If it is that grounding would have to be universal objective mind, right? A universal mind that grounds these objective truths. So if it is the case, concepts exist, concepts require minds, there's universal concepts that are true, that require grounding external to something that couldn't, that isn't universal, right? God.
I mean, I could just say that all of that comes from natural law, and I don't know where natural law comes from, but I can say that it's not reasonable to assume that it comes from a deity, because deities are extremely radical claims that I don't think should be the natural conclusion in these argumentations. Like, if somebody said, do you think it's more rational to believe that these comets came from gods throwing footballs out of the sky, or do you think it's more a natural conclusion or rational conclusion that it could come from something scientific? I'm always going to go something scientific when it comes to these things. And you're asking me to accept a non-scientific conclusion to something that I think will have a scientific conclusion at the end of the day, or closer to science as we understand it. So I'm like, we don't have to agree there. I'm just saying that's my logic on it. You can say that it has to come from like a mind. I'm just not going to accept that presupposition. So we can get that at a later time, but I'm more interested in the raising.
That wasn't a precept. That wasn't a precept argument. That was more of a That's fine. I did do a quick precept, but so just to answer your question, what was it again? Sorry.
Yeah, specifically about religious agency. Influence agent. We can talk about that later. I don't think. Okay. Anyways, with religious agency, raising a large portion of the community to just accept their parents' beliefs as their own, as in, I'm telling you what to believe. You're a child, so of course you're going to accept it and you're going to engage in it and believe in it and practice it in your childhood, which we know has a statistical influence over their adult religiosity. That takes away from religious agency as a concept being promoted in society.
Yeah, you could say parents have a huge influence, and then bringing them to church is, a bad thing. But I would just say I would disagree with that wholeheartedly. I would say there's plenty of good things that come from going to and practicing any sort
That's
of
not the
faith.
argument. The
Pardon?
argument is not whether good things can come from it. There are good things that can come from like doing terrible things. If you hold somebody if you fucking are very controlling about your child's upbringing and you're super controlling as a helicopter parent, there could be positives to that. But you could point out more negatives. You could say like, oh, well, actually they should have more freedom when it comes to what career they want to pursue, what passions they want to pursue. Even if you think you know what's best for them, even if you can point to positives in their life that could be good for them, it doesn't automatically mean that it's a good fit for them and you should give them the freedom to pursue that, right? I'm saying that when it comes to religiosity, even if you think you have it right, even if you think that you can point to positives, you should give them the freedom to pursue their own beliefs outside of the extreme influence of your desires for their beliefs around religiosity.
Yeah, I would totally support anybody going. I don't say raising kids religiously is terrible, but if you know a young individual wants to go outside of their faith, um, you know,
That's not
I
the
would.
question.
Well,
If
you're talking
you're
about autonomy. I
you're
would
kind of
recommend
presupposing that
that.
they're
Like,
already in the faith to leave it.
yeah, if you grow up in the church, you're going to be in the church. Is that a
I'm going to
bad
be in the
thing?
pit. You shouldn't be in the pit in the first place. That's my argument. You should be limiting your access to the pit so they can free think about these things. If you're bringing them to the institution and you're telling them to like believe in it and you're praying with them, you're doing these things to affirm the faith, you're not giving them that freedom because you're already having that level of influence over what they're going to believe.
Okay, so let's see how I would disagree with you. I just want to see how this goes. So if I ask my young son, right, he's 6, do you want to come to church? And they come. Am I wrong for bringing my kid to church?
Well, I think the morality around church is a little. I have contingents. I have like specifics with that because obviously a lot of people can't afford like childcare, especially in this economy when it comes to church. So a lot of people bring them out of necessity. There's a child section, but there's still amount of influence in there. I would say the amount of influence in there should be limited and outside as well. But if they are saying that, expressing that they want to pursue that, I think at the first time that a child expresses that they want to go to church, you should also give them resources to look into other religions. They don't have to use them, but you should make it freely accessible and emphasize that I'm going to love you the same. Here's other information. You do not have to accept my faith, but like if you want to pursue it, I will give you the freedom to pursue it. I think that is the most open-minded way to raise a child, where you are maximizing religious autonomy and minimizing religious influence over how they could believe, knowing you are an authority figure in their life. And a lot of times they're going to accept your truths as their truths. And maybe if you care about religious autonomy, you don't want them to accept your truth as their truth when it comes to religiosity.
I can see your viewpoint when it comes to autonomously thinking. If it's the case, I control what my child sees, etc. Right? That's parenting, though, and I wouldn't say parenting's a wrong thing, right?
Okay, then you would say that you only care about religious autonomy so much, and it can be superseded by this idea of parenting, in which I would want to hear your justification in which instances parenting supersedes this religious autonomy and why you don't care about religious autonomy in these instances.
Yes. So in, each particular instance, it comes down to parenting styles, right? I'm going to say your grounding for this is arbitrary, right? This is I feel so
We already
argument.
agreed on religious autonomy before. Why are you backtracking? I feel like that is backtracking. You're saying, well, it's important to care about people's freedom around their beliefs, but then you're saying, well, actually, you don't need to care about it that much if you consider it a parenting style.
Well, I'm just saying when it comes down to autonomy, I'm saying yes, parents can control whether their kid sees X, Y, and Z. Right? Is it okay
Yes,
to
and there's
show
control
people
that is too controlling, and there's control that is appropriate. I'm arguing controlling what your children are seeing around religiosity has a heavy influence and should not be the case. If it's affecting their beliefs, 100%, you should be maximizing religious autonomy by having that level of control to allow them to freely think about these topics rather than controlling what they think about these topics.
Again, I think your interpretation, even just of controlling, right? It is the case, children, raising a child religious, right? Could a child not be brought up and still choose said religion? You're saying negate that, stop the learning process, because when you're teaching, like you brought up before, there's so many different belief systems.
But I feel like you're pivoting.
I can teach my belief system without forcing you to choose to believe what I'm articulating, right? It's almost an education.
You're strawmanning my argument rather than being maximizing religious autonomy to being the chance of religious autonomy. That is not what I'm arguing. Obviously, I was raised in my faith and I left it. I was raised Christian. I'm now atheist. Nobody's arguing that you cannot leave. Nobody's arguing that you cannot stay. We're arguing that your choice should be emphasized. And I feel like you agreed with it earlier until it applied to religion.
No, I agree. Nobody should be forced to
Nobody's
believe
arguing
anything.
force. Maximizing religious autonomy is not just saying, well, don't hold your kid down in a gurney and make them read the scripture. We're saying you should emphasize that they can believe different things and do that with action, not just words. And these are the actions I presented as a framework for a positive way to raise a child, minimizing religious influence. And I don't know if you like that or dislike that, but it seems like you didn't say whether that was good or bad. You just said, well, people can have their parenting styles, which I think was a slight deflection.
Yeah, well, because my view is when it comes to raising children religious, like I brought up before, when it comes to some religions practicing, terrible acts that obviously I don't agree with.
Stop catastrophizing. Nobody's talking about human sacrifice in this example. I'm saying you're influencing their religious beliefs. That doesn't have to, you don't have to go to the torture, you don't have to go to the enslavement, you don't have to go to those examples to argue against me. You can say, well, actually, some level of influence is okay because, but you're not making that argument.
Yeah, so when it comes down to raising children religiously wrong, just the prompt, which I disagree with, right? When you break it down to, should you force your kid to believe identically to your beliefs? Yeah, you shouldn't force anybody to do anything. That's where you're going, and I'm saying the ability to choose is there. You can educate them. You were educated during this your atheist
If you
journey.
okay, I'm going to try to make this a visual representation. If you wanted your child to go pursue whatever career they wanted to pursue, and you wanted them to feel like they could pursue any career they wanted to pursue, would you train them to be a server for the first 18 years of their life? Would you train them to be an engineer the first 18 years of their life if you wanted them to feel free to pursue whatever they wanted? Do you think that would have no influence or impact over what they feel free to pursue or how heavily they might believe in what you're telling them to believe? Because let's be honest, most people aren't presenting a multiple choice question when they're raising their children religious. Most of them aren't giving them open-ended answers as to what the conclusions could be. They're filling in the blanks and they're circling A. They're telling them what the conclusions are and telling them to believe it by telling them to engage in it, whether it's through prayer, whether it's through going to church, whether it's through community, whether it's through affirmation. Let's be real, that is 99% of religious upbringings, not the torturing and child sacrifice ones, just like genuine religious upbringing 99% of the time.
Kids adopt their parents' beliefs. That's your, yeah.
Kids that adopt it or not, but it has an extreme influence over the amount of people that will adopt it. I've used America as an example before. I'll use it again. 85% of American Christians were raised that way. We know specifically Abrahamic beliefs have an extremely sticky influence over people's religiosity as adults. People are much more likely to stay in those beliefs because they're especially more societally accepted and considered rational in society, rather than other belief systems like belief in crystals or belief in Buddha or other belief systems are much more, oh, those are Eastern, those are not from here. It's like there's the socialization aspect has a heavy influence over what religions have a certain amount of influence with upbringing. And we know that certain religious upbringings, specifically in America, have extreme influences over what they're going to end up believing as adults. If we're going to be honest, most people don't really critically think about whether it's factually true. Even as adults, people emotionally reason or use moral reasonings rather than whether they think it's actually accurate or not as to why their God is true or real. Can we accept that at least?
I would say some people aren't rational, that's fine. They don't have any epistemic justification to
I feel
support
like
their
most
belief.
people don't rationally debate their religiosity being accurate. Most people aren't scholars. Most people don't do these debates about philosophy and everything about their religion. Most people are just religious. Most people just go to church and like it. Most people just like believe and they like certain aspects of it that make them feel comfortable or make them feel good, or they think like these things are convinced to them as a child and they just consider like, oh well, yeah, that makes sense. That seems right. Like that's most people. If we're gonna talk about it, there's very few people that actually like critically think about it in these ways.
Even for those people, it could just be something, you're an atheist, you might just say it's self-evident. So, people have their reasons regardless of
But I'm not telling people to be
X,
atheists.
Y, and
I'm telling
Z.
them to believe what they believe.
That's fine. If you want to believe, I would say if I go to church tomorrow and I see an 8, 9-year-old, they might not have, sound argumentation to defend the faith.
An 8 or 9-year-old doesn't even have the concept of sound argumentation to defend the faith because they're not believing from sound argumentation. They're believing because their parents told them to. Let's be real. They weren't debated into that opinion. They were told it was true. God loves you, sweetie. Pray. Sing these songs. It's so nice in this church. You're going to have this like youth group that you're going to go read. It's going to be so fun. You're going to get snacks. You're going to play with your friends. You're going to have so many friends in these groups. That's how religious upbringing happens a lot of the time. It's not, well, actually, sit down at the dinner table. I'm going to bring up all this architecture. I'm going to bring up all of these fossils that prove God's existence. I'm going to show you the exact area where Noah's Ark was, where the Red Sea was split. Like, no, people aren't doing that with their kids. They're telling them it's true and the kids believe it because their parents are authority figures.
Okay, so is Santa wrong?
Is Santa wrong? One, I think it's a pivot. Two, I think it's different because those are considered temporary beliefs that people grow out of, not things people devote their lives to. Therefore, much less people are willing to grow into those beliefs as permanent as adults, right?
So you're saying it's only wrong because it influences them as an adult? So you're saying
I'm saying maximizing religious autonomy is important, and that's about people in general, as in you should let people believe what they want to believe. And that's mainly about adults because that influences legislation, that influences policy, that influences how you treat people in society. Kids are going to treat people of Santa based on what? They're supposed to be nice, they're supposed to be kind, and then they'll grow out of that belief eventually. That's not harmful, but people who have these religious beliefs and they're pressured into it, that has extreme influences over, one, religious supremacy, opinions about certain legislation, about how other people should be treated in society. It has extreme influence. That's why we emphasize religious autonomy so much, is because we didn't like being under religious rule. We didn't like other religious people telling us to conform to their beliefs when it comes to spiritual faith, right? That's why we emphasize freedom of religion in this country, even though it's not what people say it means. It's like people have that ideal in this country.
I hear you. I do, but at the same time, I'm not really grasping your point, because it is the case we both support democracy.
But you grasped the point when I was saying religious autonomy separate from religious upbringing. But then when I said that religious upbringing was contrary to religious autonomy, suddenly you had an issue with it. Why?
Well, to your point, this is equal to me bringing up two competitive theories in science, right? When it comes to, special relativity versus quantum loop gravity, right? These are two competing theories. If I teach my kids these, is it going to influence their position in adulthood on the groundbreaking theory of gravity?
You should measure the harm of those beliefs being enforced. If you, like, people who enforce these radical beliefs in their children that are political radical beliefs that raise their kids to be in the triple K, who raise their kids to be in like certain radical groups, that can be considered harmful. Or if they're in a cult or anything like that, that's considered harmful because it's like a lack of freedom, a lack of like autonomy. I think people that have like strictly political households, that can also be stifling and controlling, and can also lead people the opposite way, or to just believe what their parents are saying without any critical thinking, and that leads to a herd mindset, which I also disagree with. I think you should recognize that people should have autonomy of thought in certain things that should be emphasized. I think religion, especially when you have this mindset of you're entitled to your religious beliefs, I'm entitled to mine, that is evidence that religious autonomy should be emphasized. And I think people say that, but they don't mean it when they're willing to brainwash their kids into their religious faith. Let's call it what it is. You're not giving them the freedom to critically think about it. You're telling them to accept as truth long before they can even consider critically thinking about it.
Again, so it is a faith. It is a set of beliefs,
Yep.
Whatever you want to have. You have your faith, I have my faith. You believe more on the secular version of reality. But regardless, if you want to teach your kid secularism is the case.
This isn't answering anything I said. You're just saying, well, if you want to do what you do, I do what I do. That's just saying
because your version of harm is to me.
You agreed with the harm before, but not when it came to religion.
Listen, you said measurement.
You agreed that limiting religious autonomy is harmful, and then when it came to religious upbringing, suddenly you didn't believe that anymore because it's a parenting style. I feel like you have a cognitive block with this topic.
What you're saying is very ambiguous when you say limiting religious autonomy. I hear that, and I'm saying by limiting, you're saying no access to information.
Okay, right? I don't want to give too many examples that are personal because I want to just keep it on the logic, but I did not feel free to pursue other religions growing up because I was told to accept my parents' faith. Do you think that is limiting religious autonomy?
No.
How?
Because you were fully capable of learning things. You were fully capable. Are you an agent?
Yes.
Okay. Can agents make decisions?
Yeah. So like 85% of American Christians being raised that way is just like nothing, doesn't hold any significance. Do you think those people's autonomous, religious autonomy was limited by that? Or do you think every single one of those people should have just overcame their indoctrination, just overcame the brainwashing, overcame what their parents are telling them to accept their entire lives as true and devote their lives to? They're just supposed to overcome it and just be like, well, just be better. Is that your argument?
Of course, there might be external pressures, but that doesn't limit. This is what your point is.
Is that your argument?
No, my argument is tons of kids are forced to say no alcohol,
I feel like you're being
smoking,
ignorant
and
to the amount of
actively
influence that happens.
Kids go out and they smoke and they drink, right? So they have the ability as agents to make that decision, which removes this external force, even though you might hold your parents as authoritative juggernauts in your life, you still have the ability to go outside and learn external things, making it the case that you have not
You
only
can
autonomy.
doesn't mean you will. And if we're looking at statistics, if we're looking at what's actually happening, a lot of people just aren't because they didn't consider the possibility. People just aren't thinking about it because they aren't taught to think about it. They're taught to conform. They're taught to accept. They're not taught to critically think about it in the way that you can end up at a different belief system. They're taught to critically think about it to where you end up at the same belief system. That's what happens with Christianity and a lot of other Abrahamic faiths and belief systems. It's just like, well, you can critically think about it, but it's still true at the end of the day, and you should devote your life to it because your soul is on the line. It's like there's so much emotional pleading. There's so much influence in those spaces around staying in that belief system that I think is so wild to believe that, like, well, every single person technically has the chance to believe something different. So we shouldn't express that freedom in the way that I'm arguing.
But you can, again, this is where your limit is. Your argument is external forces, parents limit a agent's ability, and I'm saying, is it forceful? You say no, it's not forceful. So they're just saying, hey, I believe
I'm saying it's not force.
I'm teaching
the amount
you
of
thus.
It's manipulative. How about that? Is that a better word for it? It's manipulative.
That's perspective based.
I think it's factual. I think raising your child to accept a deity as true from an age of infancy is manipulative. Whether they think that it is good manipulation or bad manipulation, I think they deep down recognize the amount of influence they're having.
Again, let's say it is true. Is it still manipulation?
Yes.
Teaching them a fact.
Fact according to who?
I said if it is true. Hypothetical.
Oh, I thought you were saying if it's true that it's manipulation. Oh, yeah, like even if that religion is true, that means the other religions are false, then those other people that are being raised in those religions are still being manipulated into that faith, right?
No, I'm giving the hypothetical. If X is
They're
true,
not being manipulated into that faith?
let's say this. For example, we agree Earth is a globe. If I teach you Earth is a globe, you
But
ought
again,
to believe. You might
twisting
appeal.
the argument. You're
But
twisting
here's
the
the
argument
thing.
to being, well, no, it's okay if you manipulate them because it's true. So then you're just presupposing that your religion is accurate, in which you would have to change your argument to, well, actually, raising your children religious is wrong unless it's my specific belief, which happens to be true.
Not necessarily. What I'm saying here is, if it's the case, majority of kids under 6, they don't, even adults, right, can't give you a quick understanding of the heliocentric model, right, when it comes to planetary bodies. Nobody
Yeah.
can give you the circumference of the globe, yet they concede to these things with appealing to external authority when it comes to thought being a scientific consensus without any rational justification.
Yeah, but the
right?
whole point
Am
is
I
that there's no consensus
manipulating
on faith. There's
Am
no
I-
consensus on faith.
you?
That's why you're entitled to your beliefs, I'm entitled to mine, is because there's no consensus. Because there's such a split and people are so devout and firm in their beliefs. That's why you respect your neighbor's belief, respect to their belief. And if you impose your belief on theirs, it's disrespectful. If you invite your Muslim neighbor over and you preach to them at dinner, that's rude as fuck. And if I'm atheist and invite you into my home and I teach you at the dinner table that God isn't true, that's rude as fuck. Because there's no consensus on belief, so we have this big idea of people have their religious autonomy, and we respect that as adults. We don't consider it when it comes to children, and that's my entire argument, is that children are the future and also are who we are in the past. You know what I mean? We were influenced by this, so our religious autonomy was limited by the amount of influence that happened to us because we are products of our upbringing. So if we wanted to maximize religious autonomy and actually see who actually wanted to believe in something, you would give them the freedom to pursue what they wanted to believe rather than telling them this is true and you can pursue something else after I already indoctrinate you into what I want you to believe first. And I'm saying it's inconsistent to believe that and also believe in religious autonomy and this idea that you're entitled to your religious beliefs, I'm entitled to mine. I think if you say that for your neighbor but not for your child, you're a hypocrite.
But do you understand the example? I think you just ran right over it. So you're saying I have
explain
trust
the
in,
difference.
but you're
It's not
saying
running over it.
I have trust in X consensus. So
There's no consensus on religion.
But that's the thing. There is a consensus among churches. There is a consensus. So
Okay, your church isn't all of society.
Again, sir, if you hold as an individual,
okay, but if there's a consensus in the household, then that's justifying a cult.
This is. I just want to give out the. Let me just.
You're saying authority. You're saying belief in authority. Belief in a parent is also belief in authority. Are you saying in that same logic that you can have faith in what other people are presenting you? If it's a church presence, do you not also justify that when it comes to cults?
Again, this is what I'm articulating. If I hold to X consensus, let it be the church, and you hold to X consensus, let it be something else. If you, as a parent, articulate that this X consensus I believe to be true, and you say the same thing, I believe in X consensus, Y consensus to be true, are both parties being manipulative?
What are you referencing with X consensus? Are you just saying
you brought up the
scientific
consensus? You brought up a scientific consensus. I'm bringing up a consensus among.
But I said there's no consensus when it comes to religion because we're a melting pot. Because there's people with so many different beliefs that are devout in their beliefs, and there are so many intellectual researchers and historians and theologians who come to different conclusions. So it's not a consensus. With a lot of these things that you're arguing when it comes to science, there is a lot more consensus than there is with religion. There's a lot of scrutiny when it comes to belief system that I feel like you were just ignoring. Because you're acting as if, oh, well, because there's a consensus in this church group, you can just invite people into that church group and therefore you're a part of that consensus and you don't really get a lot of choice there. You're going to believe in it. That's why you're going to indoctrinate you into the faith. That's like saying, well, there's a consensus in this one society about what faith is true. So I'm going to bring you into this without really asking you first, because children don't really ask to be brought to church the first time. They're just kind of brought into it and you're told that it's true. And you're brought in. It's like, well, yes, it's true. Believe in it. That's what happens with religious upbringing 99% of the time. You're brought into it without a lot of choice or agency or consideration as to what could actually be the truth of it. You're brought into it and then you're a part of that consensus according to your argument. So you don't have choice in whether you're part of that church consensus, which is different than societal consensus, which is not made up on religion. The whole point is that we're a melting pot of people who have different ideas of what religion is true, and that should be respected. And you respect that when it comes to your neighbor, but not when it comes to your child. How is that not hypocritical?
Again, the child is learning the truth because I already told you I'm a precept. I have the true faith. But
okay, then you're not willing to engage with somebody with a different belief system than you.
Let's say, like I said, let's say, for example,
if your argument is I'm right, you're wrong, you're not willing to engage in good faith debate.
If I have a Muslim friend who follows the Muslim faith, I'm not a part of Islam. I do not hold that to be true.
Also, how are you raising your child to be open-minded and being willing to accept other faith is true if you're presupposing that the only truth could be God? Because
that's my argument. Sorry, I win, right? It is what it is.
You're presupposing that you win, so a win by technicality under your delusion.
No, obviously this is very we didn't dive deep into the metaphysics, but my conclusion, there's other arguments to get to my conclusion. That's just a quick tongue-in-cheek
argument. And you're just presupposing that I would accept those arguments?
No, I gave you the argument, and you said concepts exist, concepts require minds. There are universal concepts that are objectively true. That would require universal grounding.
I didn't agree to literally any of those statements.
Okay.
I didn't. Okay. By the way, I said concepts. I said I believe concepts require a mind under our current understanding, and that objective truth, I believe in certain objective truths under our understanding. I said I believe to every single one of those claims. You were saying that I said 100% is true. So again,
yeah, you believe them to be true.
I don't feel like you were listening. But my belief is not 100%. That's what I'm saying. You keep presenting as if it is.
Again, no, you're fallible. I'm fallible. We could all listen.
No,
That's fine.
you are not saying you're fallible when it comes to God.
Well, God's infallible, grounding, objective
Great.
truth.
We're not talking about God
That's
being
the
infallible. We're
argument.
talking about you being infallible when it comes to the existence of God. Stop mixing those up.
Well, of course, it is the fact that something exists. It's something, not nothing. That nothing
Great.
couldn't
So
exist.
more
God.
presupposing.
No, it's not. It's not even that. But
Oh my God. It
you
couldn't
got me
be
off
anything
track
but a
here.
higher power. It couldn't be anything but a deity. It couldn't be anything but what I'm proposing.
Either way, we're both fallible. I grant that. But if you accept the premises, which is I believe to be true, right? The conclusion is if you believe these things to be true, the conclusion follows.
But what
was a
these things
valid
that we're
structure.
accepting to be true, we're not agreeing on when it comes to religious upbringing. I'm saying we agreed on the initial premise of religious autonomy that people should have the right to believe what they want to believe, and that should be emphasized. I feel like you said it should be emphasized until when it came to religious upbringing, because it's not emphasized with religious upbringing. You immediately recognize that it's the opposite when it comes to religious upbringing. You were telling them to not emphasize religious autonomy because you know the amount of influence that religious upbringing has on what they're going to believe as an adult, as in the evidence I provided by 85% of American Christians being raised that way. You know it has a statistical impact over what they're going to believe as an adult, and you were ignoring the amount of religious autonomy that it limits by influencing what they are more likely to believe or have freedom of belief in by raising them religious. Like, I feel like you understand that it's limiting religious autonomy to an extent, not immediately, like not entirely. You still have choice, but your amount of choice is limited by manipulation tactics that are telling you what to believe. And I think you're only post hoc rationalizing this because you realize that, well, actually, I'm okay with a certain level of religious autonomy being limited, even though I initially agreed that it should be like emphasized. It's okay to be limited because I want to limit it, because I think I'm right.
But here's the glaring issue I think you're overlooking. On the contrary, when I proposed Y consensus versus X consensus, are both parties being manipulated when they believe X is it's true. The consensus is true, and they're articulating that I believe this is true. Come to wherever they go. If you want to go to an art museum or
how
is
do you
that
know your child
manipulative?
is telling you it's true because they believe it to be true, or because you told them it's true? How do you know?
What do you mean? How do you
know
does
your
it
child is saying God is real because they believe it to be true, or because you told them to accept that it is truth? How do you tell the difference?
How do you tell the difference of them parroting versus believing?
Neither one of those examples was parenting. It was whether their belief was genuine or implanted.
Parroting, like hi,
parroting.
hi.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, how do you know?
How do you know?
I wouldn't say you would know.
You would?
I would say you wouldn't know, right? It is the case that I
concern you if you care about religious autonomy at all? How do you not care about that if you care about religious autonomy?
Caring and knowing are two separate issues. My knowledge on what I'm not a mind reader. That's the
Do you know a good way to determine whether it's their belief or not? Is by giving them the freedom to pursue the belief on their own and limiting the amount of influence. That's how you can tell. That's how you can tell. You have much more confidence that it's their belief if you give them the freedom to pursue it on their own rather than telling them to accept it as your own. If you cared truly about religious autonomy, you would give that freedom, you would give that consideration, but you don't want to.
I could go two ways with this. I think your view, the secularist view, will resort to hard determinism, but...
What's hard determinism? What are you referencing there? Well,
it is the case that, we're matter in flux, cause and effect, meaning it's the case that every cause has an effect. Your neurons are firing off synapses. You hold the brain states, making it the case that your actions are just of a prior event being a cause and effect, with matter in flux. So you don't actually make choices. You're determined regardless of outcome. There is no choice. It's just cause and effect. You have no will to choose otherwise.
Oh, so this is like the anti-free will argument. I think the free will argument is pointless if you still have free will tied in a basement to a radiator. If you literally cannot move a muscle of your body and you are in like literally muscle relaxers, you cannot move your body, you still have free will because you can do whatever you can with your current ability. I think the argument of whether free will exists or not is so fucking pointless. Because we're arguing what should maximize free will and what should maximize people's choice on things that they should have choice in, not just whether it technically exists that you can do what you want with your body with the current capabilities that you have. I hate when people argue that. I think it's pointless. I truly do.
Well, my point being is that free will, that religious free will, that is with God either way. So your denial of this, saying this causes harm X, Y, and Z, without this account of free will, you have no account for it. And it would result in a hard deterministic view where there is no autonomy. You're determined. There's no choice involved in what you want to believe or how you believe. It's matter.
If you're just saying it's based on like chemical releases in the brain and the synapses of your brain firing, I would say that's my current belief. I think that because it's not a God telling us what to do, that it's probably based on that. But I also don't see harm in that, because we're not telling people to only conform to that belief system and that like you have to believe in this specific idea that like, oh, you're only determined by the way in which you're created in your surroundings and like all these environmental factors in your biological state. Like, I think that like, I don't see any harm in that argument specifically.
Well, we're bringing up religious autonomy, right? The ability to choose otherwise. I'm saying without this religious view, accounting for this ability to choose, there is no autonomy, religious autonomy at all. You're determined based on prior events.
Okay, but this is dumb as fuck, because even in your argument, well, technically they have the right to choose, so I'm not forcing them. They can come to that conclusion. Right?
Again,
even if you're giving them the argument that, oh, well, God is true, but you're not forcing them to believe God is true, you're not brainwashing them, you're giving them the freedom to believe something different, they can still get to the determinist view. And you're saying, well, it's bad to give that freedom because they're going to have this determinist view. They could still have that determinist view under yours. The only thing is you want to limit the possibility that it's going to come to that conclusion. So then you do want to control them.
This was more of a, internal critique of your view, granting autonomy, right, and the ability to choose otherwise.
And I'm saying why that autonomy being granted is good, and you're saying it's bad because it can lead to determinism?
No, I'm saying under your view, the conclusion would be a deterministic view, negating this arbitrary, line of harm or ability to choose and otherwise. It's just, we're matter in flux. It's all determined, and there is no purpose. There is none of this.
But the thing is,
these things that
but this
are
is also
based.
dumb, because if I'm raising my child to have the freedom to choose what they want to believe, they can still get to your view. But the thing is, they're much more likely to have freedom in which they actually want to believe, not just what you're presupposing they should believe and telling them to believe. You're telling them what to believe. That limits what other possibilities they can come to. They can come to determinism. They can come to other conclusions. But you're making it much more likely that they come to your conclusion. So you're saying that it's good to limit that ability, or not ability, but the chances that they can come to other conclusions. It's good to limit their religious autonomy because you want them to come to that conclusion that isn't determinism. That's what I feel like your argument is. And you just said it wasn't, but I feel like you're reinforcing that it is.
I will say this, to some extent, right? I'll be gracious. I'm going to be hopping off
Gracious or honest?
I'll be gracious. So, when it comes to forcing, manipulating, any child being threatened for thinking otherwise, right? Everybody should be against that. We don't want little scared kids.
Right, that's not part of the argument. How about you address what I just said?
Why? I'm granting you that, yeah, dude.
You're catastrophizing again. And nobody was bringing up child sacrifice. Nobody was bringing up chaining a kid to a fucking radiator in your basement. I argued that you limit the amount of choice that they're going to have because you're telling them to conform to your belief. Yes, you have the technical ability to choose different. You're much less likely. Therefore, you were influencing their choice. You were influencing their freedom of thought. You were influencing this. And I'm saying you should limit that influence so they can free think on this thing. And you're saying, actually, no, it's okay if people don't do that because then they might end up with determinism. So I feel like I asked you twice. I'll ask you a third time. Are you saying it's okay to limit free thinking around religion, aka limiting religious autonomy, because you don't want them to end up with determinism through your parenting style?
When you say the word limit, like give me an example of this, because when your version of the way you're interpreting
to
this,
accept that God is true, which has an extreme influence of whether they're going to accept that God is true as an adult, which has statistical evidence backing it.
Should you limit that? No. There's no reason to.
There's no reason to limit religious autonomy or limit the upbringing.
If you said for an individual to limit their influence when it comes to articulating their opinion, right?
Okay, why should they not limit that influence even though it makes it much more likely that they're going to come to your conclusion? Do you want them to free think or do you want them to just accept what you're believing?
Again, they can do vice versa because they have the ability to rationally think.
Because there's statistical evidence backing that they're going to come to your conclusion. They're much less likely to free think.
We already went through this. You're an agent. You have the ability to choose. Making it the case.
And people in cults can fucking believe differently. They're much less likely to because of the amount of influence, right?
So if I give you a convincing argument, I shouldn't do that for my position because it influences your mind.
Not if you want them to be able to come to different conclusions and you respect their ability to. If you respect their ability to come to different conclusions, you would let them have the freedom to come to different conclusions, aka limiting the amount of influence over that. Like, I don't respect if my child is coming to the conclusion that we should have like death penalty or certain harmful things in society. So I'm trying to convince them that it's wrong. But religion is one of those things that we have a lot of freedom in society. So I don't want to influence them in that. So I'm not going to tell them, oh, God isn't true. Oh, you shouldn't believe in God. You shouldn't believe in deities. You shouldn't believe in ghosts. You shouldn't believe in this or that, because I want them to have the freedom to believe in it, because I care about religious autonomy. I care about their free thinking. You don't as much.
No, what you just said is sound argumentation, convincing argumentation is bad because it has influence. That was my question.
You're hearing what you want. I made a very sound argument. You just ignored it. There's no way you came with that conclusion from what I said. There's no fucking way.
Let me ask you this.
There's no fucking way that's what you heard from what I said.
Okay, let me ask this.
There's no way.
That was my question. Is a convincing
that the argumentation is sound? You know that bad argumentation can still convince kids that are infants that it's true. It doesn't have to be sound. It just has to be presented as truth to children who don't fucking know better. So stop saying like, well, it's just good argumentation. You're only saying that because it's your religion. If it was Pastafarianism, would you say that, oh, well, you're against good argumentation being presented? No, because you wouldn't think that it's sound.
You said convincing arguments influence limit autonomy.
I never said convincing. I said argumentation around religion influences children's belief as adults. It does. Stop straw manning my argument. I already explained it 3 times. You don't have to lie about it to argue against it.
Okay, so now you're saying specifically religion.
That was the whole argument.
So your criteria here is religion bad because I don't like it.
Stop being bad faith.
That's the position.
Stop being bad faith. I just said I don't want to raise my child to be atheist. So how the fuck is that what I said?
If you're saying this criteria is specifically for religious arguments, if a religion is convincing, it is bad because it has influence over religious autonomy.
Who said anything about how convincing
That's special pleading. Dude, that's special pleading to religious ideology.
Who said anything about how convincing it is? I said it has influence over whether they believe it as an adult. That doesn't mean it's convincing. That means that their influence is convincing. It's not the religion. It's the fact that you're a parental figure presenting it as fact. That's the influential factor, is that you were an authority figure in their life telling them it's true. And if you want them to free think about this thing, you would limit that influence. But you don't care as much.
Now I'm going to ask, an authority telling you
Stop
something
at my
is...
argument again. Go for it.
I'm asking a question. So you said an authority telling you something is true in a religious sense is bad.
When it comes to children, yes.
Okay. Is that an authority telling a kid something is true always bad?
No.
So you're special pleading to a religion. That's fallacious.
I'm special pleading to things in society that we should have free thinking on. I've already explained this 3 times. You're intentionally ignoring it. Like when I said, there's certain political beliefs that I think people should have more freedom to think on, but there's certain ones that shouldn't. I explained the difference there. I said there are things in society that are accepted that people should have free thinking on. One of those things is religion, which I think should have free thinking on. And we agree with that principle in society. You're just ignoring it here because it doesn't suit your fucking argument.
So how is this not special pleading?
I said there's reasoning as to why it applies to one and not the other. That's not
What's
special
the reason?
pleading. The reason is that people have free thinking about certain things and shouldn't have free thinking about others. Do you want people in society to free think about whether it's okay to kill people?
Pardon?
Do you want people in society to have free thinking about whether it's okay to kill people? Or do you think you should maybe raise them at a young age to accept that it's not a good thing to do?
For one, people do have free thinking on every topic. Now, is that something you shouldn't do because it's wrong?
Stop!
Yes.
Stop! Did I say they did or did not have free thinking? Or did I say they shouldn't have free thinking? As in, you should limit it. Stop lying about my positions. I'm trying to get you to a conclusion, and you're ignoring every fucking step along the way. Just listen to what I'm saying.
Yes, people shouldn't unalive people because it's bad.
That's not the fucking thing I said. Oh my God. Oh my God. Listening comprehension. Listening comprehension. Please, dear God, listen to the words coming out of my mouth. Do you think we should raise people to free think about whether it's cool or not to kill people?
I am against abortion. I think we should all be against abortion.
Oh my God. 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 I can't. He has to pivot. He has to pivot. He cannot address it directly. He has to pivot. He has to make any other argument other than what I'm saying. It was a stepping stone for an argument, and he cannot just say anything. He can't agree with it because he's already guessing that it's agreeing to something down the line that he doesn't want to agree with. He's already terrified of my future argument, so he can't agree with any of the stepping stones to that argument. Did y'all catch that? Because I caught it. How am I drinking and smoking and I can keep up with this shit and you can't? Genuinely, it's insane. Clocked 100%. 100% clocked. Because how the fuck can you not agree with what I just said? Also, Inference Engine, you were agreeing with him a lot more than you should have. You were agreeing with a lot of shit that you should not have been agreeing with. The fuck? Well, it's not that I agree. I just think he was making better arguments than you. So you were agreeing with his logical reasoning. Okay. Technicalities. You're not remaining neutral. You were like, oop, he got you there. That's not neutral, babes. But okay. Bro could not debate at all. He could. He was choosing not to. Because it was not advantageous to his argumentation. Let's be real. He was choosing to not directly reply to what I was saying. Right? How many times did I have to lay that argumentation out? That things, because it was disadvantageous to his argumentation. He was trying to say, well, you're special pleading when it comes to what people should be free thinking on growing up. And I said, no, I was providing reasoning as to why certain things should be free thinking and certain things shouldn't. And it was based on societal perception, which you can say is subjective. Sure, I think we have reasoning for it. There's reasoning as to why people should have a lot of autonomy when it comes to religiosity in society, because we have this basic sense of respect over your religious beliefs. I'm entitled to mine because there's no scientific consensus on who the fuck got it right. So we have this idea that you're entitled to your beliefs, I'm entitled to mine. It's important to culture, it's important to families, it's important to certain things, but yes, certain things should be limited when it comes to that, right? Like when parents say, oh, well, like I feel like he would concede to this if I brought up examples of things that he would agree that people should be free thinking on and things that people shouldn't be free thinking on. And if I called a special pleading for him, then he would have to contest with that, but he wouldn't. I know the fuck he wouldn't. If I had to say, do you think, because that's what I was trying to ask, do you think people should be free thinking about whether it's okay to kill people? You just say, well, technically they have thought. That's not what I asked. No, you should not be teaching people that it's okay to kill people. And if you want to bring up the abortion conversation, let's say unjustifiably kill people. Because autonomy is a reason to kill people when it comes to self-defense. Not saying abortion is self-defense, but it's preservation of autonomy, right? Okay, we can move on from that. I'm saying there are things that he would agree with that you should not be free thinking about. Do you think that you should raise a child to free think about whether it's okay to SA people? That should be the easiest yes or no. He would not have given me a technical yes or no. He wouldn't have, because he was dodging yes or no questions left and right. The whole point is that he would concede that there are things that you should free think about in society and things you shouldn't be taught to free think about in society. And things that are emphasized are things that we societally agree that you should have free thinking about. Like religion. AKA the point. It's not special pleading. It's justifications that we have as to certain things that should be free thinking in society, certain things that shouldn't. I think parents oftentimes are a lot too controlling about certain religious beliefs. Or about certain political beliefs in a household, or certain career beliefs, right? That's why people say like, oh, they're stuck in a different time, because they keep spouting that shit. And it's just like, well, that's your beliefs, these are mine. We've moved on from that shit. Like, a lot of people are not taught to free think, and that's why there's so much conformity in politics. Danny, I don't think you should be thinking about what I do in the bedroom at all. It's not my responsibility to cater to your kinks. You believe I'm confused? You should prove it. Is murder okay? Murder is a legal term. Murder is a legal term. If you're saying unjustified killing, everyone would agree with that's wrong. But murder is a legal term. I'm sure if something was considered murder, but if it was like, oh, somebody murdered somebody who was stalking and harassing their family and was making constant threats and literally like cut them a couple times, it's just like, oh, is murder okay in that example? Can you fix a car? I don't care to fix a car. Is that what's valuable to you in this argument? Do you think you're disproving any of my points by saying I can't fix a car? Okay, babe, you got me there. I can't change out some oil, so you prove me wrong on any of these points. Owned the fucking left. It's so funny. But yeah, the argument I was trying to make was that specifically when it comes to like free thinking, there are things that we should be allowed to free think about. Religion is one of those things, and it should be expressed in society and the household. And people say that when it comes to society, but they ignored it when it comes to the household. So if we got to that point, he would have deflected again, like he did every other time I brought up that point. We understand that it's something people should be free thinking about in society, as in you should not be pressuring your neighbor to believe in what you believe in. You should allow them to believe what they believe in. Like, come on. You understand that concept when it comes to society. You just ignore it when it comes to the household. Even though it influences that your children are going to be adults. They're going to be people in society that you influenced to just accept your faith as true. So that skews religious autonomy in society, that a large portion of them that were pressured to believe what their parents believed have less religious autonomy in that society. So you have a society that has a weak standard on religious autonomy because so many people didn't consider religious autonomy in the household. Right? Should children learn about different races? Yes. The whole point about growing up and education is you should learn about different people in society because you're going to live with them. You're going to learn about like different groups in society, different races, different ethnicities, different backgrounds, people with different hair color, people with different genes than you, people with different like nail length, like everything, people with diseases, people with disabilities. You should learn about everybody. Yes, you should learn about religion. You should learn about people with religion in society. You should learn about religion as a concept in education. Raising them religious is not teaching them about religion, it's telling them to believe in it. I learned about religion in public school very weakly, but guess what? When I finished that class, I wasn't praying to every religion I learned about. The point about raising them religious is that they're praying to it. They're worshiping it. They are believing in it. That's the point about religious upbringing. Stop conflating education with upbringing. Come on. Why is he yelling? Why not? Bitch. Why not? Evan Kraft, you're trolling in the comments. I'm not letting you up. Carly, I didn't see if you were trolling in the comments. Lego. I've never spoken publicly about Dr. Fauci, so you're talking about somebody else. Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. What topic do you want to talk about?
Oh, man. I don't know. I am like real conflicted in here. Can I just like say a whole spiel and then you can respond?
As long as it's opposition to one of the points up here.
It's opposition-ish. So,
Okay.
I run the kids program at my church.
How dare you?
Rude. My church is very liberal. We call ourselves the church for people who don't fit church. And so when I see the word religion, I'm like, barf. Because that to me like symbolizes indoctrination and telling people that they have to fit in a box to, you know, they have to be in this box and believe certain things and act a certain way to be accepted in that society. And I am lucky enough to have found a church that is of, I will say, Christian ancestry that says, hey, we don't think that's necessarily true. And
I mean, yeah, I get the whole argument of progressive religion, but it's still indoctrination at the end of the day because you're still telling them to believe in it, even if you think you're using nicer words.
well, and that's where I have a hard time because we often argue like we don't know. We don't know. And
Well,
honestly,
yeah, that's more
anybody
free
who
thinking, but it's still telling them that that's what you believe, and you're still bringing them into a space where a lot of people believe the same thing. That still has a level of influence. So I think it's less harmful, but I still think it should be emphasized that you should have freedom of thought when it comes to belief, and you can give them resources to believe in other things. So a lot of people would consider that a lot less religious, I'm going to be honest, a lot less devout, a lot less faith-driven. But it's like, it should be emphasized that especially people that are forming opinions about the world, that they should have more options and more free thinking about what those conclusions could be, rather than being in a space where everybody's coming to the same conclusions.
I definitely agree. So I struggle with influencing these kids because I recognize how big of a responsibility it is, not just as a parent, but as somebody who influences other people's kids and their spirituality. Like, how do I do that in a way that isn't...
There's no way you can do it where the parents wouldn't be pissed. I'm not going to lie. From within a church, there's no way you could do it that even if you're in the most progressive church, that it wouldn't be influential and it wouldn't be like the parents wouldn't be pissed. They're like, oh, we're a progressive church, but you showed the Quran to my child? That's crazy. Oh, you showed a scientific book that could contradict my belief system? That's crazy. You showed like another explanation for the origin of the universe that didn't end in my deity? That's crazy. Because even at the end of the day, progressive parents that are religious still want their kids to believe in their religion.
I agree in most Christian settings. And I mean, maybe I'm just here to brag on my church because that's literally not the case. Like they interview people on stage who are Buddhist and who believe in Quran and who don't.
Yeah, but that's public setting. Do you think if you showed a child a Quran that there's like a low chance that their parent might be upset about that or a good chance that their parent might be upset about that. Because you can have people on the stage and say, we respect different beliefs, but what the parents' actual opinions on are the influence of their child, which is the whole point of the debate, is influencing your child of their belief system. It's like parents would have opinions. I can guarantee.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably true. I mean, I've done some borderline stuff that's like I'm not shy about, like, when it's Pride Month, we do Pride stuff. We do Pride crafts. We talk
They
about...
hate your ass.
Yeah.
They hate your ass over there. Progressive churches.
They haven't fired me yet, so that's
fine. It was not Adam and Steve. I don't know if you were heard differently, but it is Adam and Eve.
But I also think, like, one thing I really love about, like, my interpretation of what spirituality is and my, like, belief in that is that I don't have all the answers. I love to explore other faiths because I live in a predominantly Christian place with predominantly Christian religions. I kind of fell into this church and it has been what it has been. But my interpretation of Jesus as a person is like, he would absolutely stand up for everything that we stand up for. He would absolutely believe in autonomy and free belief and questioning. Like, he was a heretic in a sense. Like, he questioned literally everything.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Like, it's great. Are you singing hymns? Are you singing religious music?
No.
At church, you're not singing religious music?
No.
What church is this? Well, Jesus. No offense.
No.
Like, that's wild to me. Like, I even went to, like, Elevation Church, which is, like, such a progressive church. And it's, like, that's really rare. Not gonna lie. I think it's really rare that, like,
literally did a song from K-pop Demon Hunters, like, 3 weeks ago.
Okay, that's a school club at most. I'm not gonna lie.
I promise. It is.
Where does the religion come in the institution? If anything, it just sounds like a multi-religious educational space.
It could be. The main thing is that, like, we meet people in their spirituality where they're at. So if they want to learn about, like, a non-literal form of the Bible and they want to study that, we do a few weeks on that. We also do a few weeks on, like, you know, how do you come up, like, where does spirituality meet you? We call it thin places. Where are the thin places? Where do you, like, feel close? Like,
so you teach about different interpretations of the Bible? Do you teach about other faiths, like, interpretations and stuff? Okay, I think that's minimally harmful. I think that's minimally harmful because it's allowing people to, like, raise questions and come to different conclusions, and that's a way to express free thinking. So I have minimal issues with that. I just think it's a shitty church. I think it's great for me. I think it's great for society. I just think church don't like it. I just think
church don't like it, and we kind of like the church don't like it. Like, that's kind of why I wanted to come up here and just, like, show that there are small pockets and places that exist for people who want to explore spirituality, who don't know, like, what they believe or why they believe, but they want to connect with something bigger than them. They want to believe there's something more than, I call it, source. You can have different concepts of God. I don't believe that it's, like, some guy in the sky that has his hands on everything. I don't believe that it's, like, someone who legit wrote a book that was like, follow these rules and you have to follow them, and if you don't, you're kicked out. No thanks. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in the God that, like, meets me at the top of a mountain and loves my gay sister and, you know, is okay with me taking.
You went from a 99% score to, like, a 95. I feel like this is still heavily theologically based. I think it's free thinking. I also think that there should be a little more emphasis that you could also come to no conclusion at all. Like, I feel like a lot of people are still pressured into this idea of, like, well, I don't know which God is true, but the end result is still God. I feel like that's still very heavily emphasized in the way you're explaining it.
So would the alternative to that be atheism then? Like, if the end result isn't some sort of source,
like that it's unrealistic that it could be a deity, or it could be, like, a force or something that isn't, like, specifically spiritual. It could be, like, more nature based. So, like, people have different interpretations that aren't just, like, specifically spiritual or theological. I feel like there could be a little more room for that, and I feel like there's a lot of influence towards, like, monotheism or polytheism. But, like, yeah, I think generally non-harmful. I think that's a good upbringing. I think that would have been a lot better than what most religious people would have.
Yeah. And I agree. And I really just like, I was eager to come up and just say that like places like this exist. And my whole goal in running the kids program there is to create a sort of spiritual foundation that kids can jump off of in whatever way they want to.
But then at that point, it's like, it kind of comes to the point where it's like, why call it a church at that point? It's like, if you're giving so much freedom to pursue different religions rather than the one because the whole point of having a church is going there to worship or going there to perform faith in that religion. And it feels like you're so much more emphasized on faith in any religion or like other beliefs. So I feel like it's like, I understand it's like if that in itself is a religious belief, like sure. But my understanding is like churches towards a specific belief system, and it should be emphasized more about like that belief. So it's like, I feel like at that point, it's like blurring the lines of what like church is, but like, I like the concept.
Yeah. And maybe it is. I mean, like in the really Christian times, like now around Christmas, like we recognize that like we're a church that's based in Christian faith. But one thing I've always appreciated about it is that we don't like, anytime I'd gone to church, I didn't grow up in church. Anytime I had gone to church as a kid, I was like Easter or Christmas. And it was always like, hey, here's the Bible. Here's this passage of the Bible. And here's how you should be living your life now based on the Bible. And then I found Friends Church and they were like, hey, here's your life now. Here's some stuff in the Bible that might apply. Try that. And just be a good person and do good stuff. Like,
I would say specifically if you're giving solutions for questioning people at younger ages, I think that there's still a little more room for like, yes, that's good to give possible solutions, but people can definitely get one track minded if they get that one solution. So I think like specifically it's like even in open-minded like parental structures where you're just like, oh, well, you can believe whatever you want. And then they're just like, okay, well, what's the answer to this? And they're like, okay, Christianity. Then they're going to go down like a Christianity pipeline and they're going to find out that, oh, well, Christianity solves this, 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 and this. And then they don't really look to think elsewhere. So it's like, yes, it's good to provide solutions. I just think that like, especially at younger ages, it should be emphasized more that like other people come to different conclusions for this question that you might be having, right? So it's like, yeah, it's just like, I think we pretty much agree. I'm probably going to drop you for some opposition that's like more different, but like, yeah, it's just like, I mostly agree with you, but just like, my whole point is about maximizing religious autonomy. And I think you have like a little influence, but it's like, it's fine. I don't really give a shit. It's like, there's no harm and there's like barely any harm to care about in the way you're arguing it.
Yeah, that's fair. I also wanted to like point out that if kids aren't exposed to any kind of religion or spirituality as kids, then being exposed to it fully and all the options as adults could be more harmful than repairing or like...
Yeah, I wouldn't say adults. I would say when they're starting to question, you can give them resources to pursue. And if they express desire to go to those institutions, then I think that you should be allowed to. And if they're going to one, they should go to like at least two other or something. It's just like, it's more like, I don't want them to get horse blinders on. And I also don't want them to not have any introduction whatsoever, because that is a mindset in itself.
Yeah, I agree. I fully agree. And I'll PM you with the YouTube link for my church. You can watch us on Sunday.
That's very nice. I might not, but thank you.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you being respectful.
Cheers.
Yep. All right. Vern, weren't you talking shit in the comments? Maddie, weren't you? Hold on. Why are people talking shit and then sending requests? Oh, because trolls, duh. La 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 la. La 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 la. Somebody come up and talk about something other than religion. Oh, again, not a church. No, I think you were saying something correct, but it made you believe. Okay, I'm just saying raising children to praise the one and only Savior Jesus Christ is positive. Okay, yeah. I did come to the correct conclusion based on what you said. What's your opinion about Islam? I don't know enough to speak on it, but I think that based on an Americanized, uneducated perspective, I think that it's not very equal in the gender treatment. Which I have the same critiques for Christianity, by the way. To different extremes, but still. La 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 la. I have a critique of a lot of religions' treatment of women specifically. Or patriarchal expectations, but you know. I think it's for a reason. And I think people promote it for a reason. Not all holier than thou as well, right? A lot of guys like the traditionalist mindset because they like the power dynamic that comes with it. Right? A lot of these guys that are slut shaming for the sake of traditionalism. A lot of these guys that are arguing the body count topic, but then justify cheating or say it's just different for guys because guys aren't as emotional. I think there are certain lines you can draw, right? Between red pill spaces and toxic religious interpretation for personal gain that endorses their ego or power or need to be in control being displayed in relationships. But it's like, it's okay to do because it's from a religion, right? But I think that's something people don't really want to talk about in society as much because it makes them a little uncomfy. Kids don't need to learn about that yet? What? LGBTQ education? LGBTQ education is extremely important and relevant. If you're learning about men and women falling in love and you don't experience that, it's also good to know that your kind of attraction also exists. Like, it's so weird to just exclude an entire portion of that topic. Also, it's weird if you are taught the topic that men love women and then you run into somebody who doesn't love the opposite sex. You'll be like, whoa, that's weird. What the fuck is that? I never learned about that. That's gross. That's people's reaction to shit they have no understanding of, which is why we demonize ignorance. When people have ignorant interactions, people have ignorant behaviors towards certain groups, it's considered hate derived from lack of education. And how do you combat ignorance? With education. A lot of people don't know shit about LGBTQ community, and you should. You vote on it. You have social opinions on it. You have opinions about how the media should look because of it. You have opinions on what people should learn about because of it. You have influence. You have opinions about the validity of certain aspects of the community because of it. You have opinions on legislation and politics because of it. It's like, it's so relevant to so many people's adult like perspective on life, but you think that they should just be shell-shocked by it or taught a biased perspective at home so they have no objective foundation for it? Like, that's just weird and controlling to me. Why do you need to preserve education at home when the one that will be taught in school is literally just facts? It is literally just facts. Why do you need to preserve a non-factual education about a community? Marshall, I didn't mute you, but I'd assume that somebody did it for a good reason. Like, if they not gay, why do it? What do you mean? I just said because you could run into a gay person, you should be shell-shocked, and people also form opinions about politics, society, sociology, legislation due to the education that they have and the opinions that they form, which should be informed. It's better to promote informed opinions about minority groups or other groups in society rather than uninformed opinions, right? Do you not think that people's education about Indigenous people in this country, and if it was furthered, that the treatment towards Indigenous people might change, or the legislation people could propose, or the sociology around Indigenous culture being erased from society might be seen differently? That there'll be possibly less religious supremacy and less erasure of certain communities? Do you not think that that could be an after effect of public education? I think it's self-explanatory. I think it's common sense to understand that that is a result of education about communities, which is why in dictatorships, in controlling societies where they don't want you to like certain groups, one of the first things they do is limit education about that group. Book burnings, bannings, rewriting history, that happens with intention. I don't think that should be penned. I have different views. You should learn about everything, but not LGBTQ in particular. It's not more important than anything else. If it's not more important than anything else, why should it not be included? Why should it be hidden away? I feel like this is saying like, well, you should learn about people with blonde hair, or people with brown hair, but like people with red hair aren't more important than them. They're more important than anything else. So just leave it out. Leave it out. It's not relevant. Just leave it out. They shouldn't learn about that. Leave it out. But it's like, if you're learning about hair color and you don't learn about redheaded people, you didn't learn about hair color. You had an incomplete education. Truth was hidden for a reason. Right? Also, I love that you're being good faith in the comments after I didn't respond to your rage bait. If anything, religion has more followers. That doesn't prove any validity. A lot of people followed cults. Does that make it more accurate? You were definitely rage baiting before, talking about me being, what, 300 pounds with a boyfriend? Do you want to scroll up? Do you think I didn't read them? Do you think I just like gained the ability to read after you commented that shit? Do you think I didn't see that? Right? Don't get quiet now. Come on. Come on. Speak your truth, King. I answered one of your questions already, Jack. You're not the one saying it? Okay. Okay. So you do think I'm dumb. Do 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 do. Did y'all mute it? Hold on. Who was saying that shit? I could have sworn. Hold on. I'm not crazy. Hold on, y'all. Hold on. Y'all must have muted it. There's no way. Y'all saw the 300 comment, right? It was Demo? Yeah, there's no way. It was Danny? Did Danny get muted and that's why I don't see it? No, Demo, you said you don't even lift 0.5. You said you don't even lift 0.5. Let's not lie. I saw your comments too. Bro doesn't even lift. Come on. Don't gaslight me in this live. Well, do you? See, now you admit it. Now you got clocked. Oops. They both said low test. I don't even know what low testosterone. I didn't even realize that in the moment. It's literally not mean. Okay, bitch, play dumb. There was intention there, but you can still play dumb. All right, well, it's almost 3 a.m. It was going to be a short live anyways, and the people in request aren't really talking at all, so I'm good. Gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss, yeah, for sure. All right, y'all, I'm going to head out, but if you didn't get to join tonight, you can join another night and go live, and I'll catch y'all later. I'm going to go smoke.
Talk to people in the comments. I promise you I can gently put you back in there.
No, that was just like showing my point though. Like, but yeah.
Okay, but can I ask you a question?
Yeah, of course you can.
You can do that in
Okay.